existence when nothing freed nobody. It was just a transfer of authority per se. You were from chattel to a person, place, or thing. I hope you follow me. I hope y'all follow me, man. So just use your hippocampus and and just we that's gonna teach because that's what we gotta do. Hold on, man. All right. So when we talk about certain slave trades and things, when people talk about the transatlantic slave trade, and they'll talk about the Arab slave trade and how things happen to where we can't just be picking sides. When I talk about who are the cities of India, you know, when I talk about things, when I talk about certain other groups, when we talk about of all people and Muslim, when we talk about Jews per se, Muslim per se, with support of Christians, with all the holy books in hand, market over 500 million Africans from 1092 to this present day, and the public is aware of these religions with their participation in the African slave trade will begin to end during Lincoln's presidency. Mr. Lincoln said there must be an inferior and a superior. These are their words, not mine. This stuff can be researched. I, as much as any man, am in favor of superior being assigned to the white race. Most Bible thumpers at that time were deeply convicted that they were doing God's will to enslave the blacks, per se, Moors. The odd thing about this is that they who label all Africans blacks is the first place, Moors. And this state of mind must not be forgotten, although it is often unimaginable and unthinkable to the Negro, black, and colored of today. But there are many people in high places today that feel just as strongly about subjugating Africans as they were 150 to 200 to 400 years ago, Moors. So these are just things when you must understand how the laws protect you and things is written and you must do things in a certain fashion. Watch this. When we talk about a citizen, the us, when I say let's make a citizen, the us of this subtitle refer to the corporate United States of America, assumed by many persons to be a sovereign independent power. See, this is law and a constitutional concept and the interpretation of a citizen did not derive its authoritative powers from the Declaration of Independence of the original 13 United States of America. And in the course of human events, they discovered that a person was bound by the laws of nature and nature's God, that they had these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal to their creator, endowed with them certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, the right to live, liberty, the right to be free, and the right to pursuit of happiness, the right to be content, founded. The totality of these rights became what? The Bill of Rights. The U.S. Constitution was written by the people and for the people. And these laws established by freeborn and free men were from living souls who are sovereigns from the wombs of their mothers. U.S. citizens, on the other hand, had our what? Belligerents in the fields and are subject to jurisdiction. Which jurisdiction? Washington, D.C. This is the law. All U.S. citizens are 14th Amendment persons, property implemented by the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which was originally established to disguise the newly freed slaves. And the only problem was, Moors, that that those other powers, you know what powers, those political powers of those days, dug a shallow grave of fiend citizenry for the ex-slaves, and they later fell into themselves. And this is why to this day, if the American actually knew what a so-called U.S. citizen was, according to their law, according to their law, according to their law, they really would not want to be one, according to their law. You know, not no made up stuff somebody fraudulently conceal you. What most people fail to realize is during the drafting of the great document, those men, what men? When we talk about, when I go back to Freemasonry again, when I talk about who Haram Abif is, how they buried you in a shallow grave, who Haram of Tigri, who did that? Jubel, Jubal, and Jubel, what they had, a Jubilee. But the document of certain men, other you, age 21, were the only people recognized in America, right? Research this law. It was only a certain type of you that was recognized as men. Those were European men. It's just what the law said. And they were 21, and they were the only people recognized in America. Women, other nationalities, and slaves were not considered as whole persons or people, at least not with rights. That no disrespect to no one. I'm just giving you law that a pale skinned man had to respect. This is just what's written in the history books. It takes a number of persons with an S to make a people, as was written in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. The word person was summarized into fifths, and 5/5 made one complete person. Are you following me? So this person, as endowed by the Creator and the laws of nature, was declared the whole number and a free person. This endowment with the totality of fifths made a complete and perfect person and subsequently a citizen. So when the USA was first formed under the Constitution, its sovereignty was for and by the people, which was mankind, and the word person was used by the people to describe their property, businesses, and fictional beings. Person per se gave life to corporate America's oath, affidavits, notaries, and self-incriminating pro se. I'm telling you, used by straw men who like, I don't want to say the word, but nonsense, jurisdiction, and prisons. Masonic members of the Moorish Science temples are more by the words, I am a citizen of the USA. These words have been printed on their cards, but you got to understand to the order out of chaos. When I talk about free Masonic rules of Washington, D.C.'s things and oath, when I say things, you just can be traced. It's nothing secret if you are the elite. There's nothing secret or scary. That's why for those who know law, who know law, there is much a difference between sovereigns and citizens. When I say ain't no such thing as no sovereign citizen, that's an oxymoron. That's when we get to talking about the amendments, the Fifth Amendments, and all the other amendments. Amendments, freeborns, and bondservants, Moorish Americans, and Negro church members are unalienable rights and inalienable privileges. If the assumable citizens of the USA only knew the true legal definition of citizens. I told y'all I got in the Council of Courts of the USA of the world when it talks about if a Moor kills a citizen, XYZ, and if a citizen kills a Moor, that tell you it's two different things. I mean, it's there, and I have it in I demonstrate that so many times. Bond servants, Moorish Americans, and Negro church members are or unalienable rights and inalienable privileges. If the assumable citizens of the USA only knew the true legal definition of rights and inalienable privileges. If the assumable citizen of the USA only knew the true legal definition of citizen, you would be tickled. It would be laughable. And you would want to be what somebody make you. So the true 5/5, the components of a natural person. See, I give solutions. So when people ask like, what is it and how? One is your spirit, the indestructible God essence in man. Two is the soul, actions of the mind's powers, thinking, reasoning, willing, and understanding. Three is your body, the flesh, the human vehicle made of the earth, often indigenous to the land of birth. Just like if you're a wine connoisseur, when it talks about when you're dealing with wine, you want to know where the wine is from, the appellation. What's the appellation of the wine? What region it's from? Where it's from? Because that means something. You have to tell what you're connected to. For your nationality, the descendant, birth, attachment through an especial nation or tribe, free national name, lineage, identity. And five, your creed, religious path of God consciousness, established through forefathers, vine and fig tree. But four and five, your nationality and your creed, and your divine creed were the two main fifths, extracted from the African nationals. And George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and many other free Masonic slave owners who signed the Constitution of the United States also wrote in their charter as three-fifths of a person, Moors. You don't got to get mad at it. I'll just give you history. And the Constitution thus became the first legal national deed of ownership of African slaves in the new nation. And this act alone legalized racism and apartheid in an interior fabric of the new American culture. Politically certified all Negro, blacks, and colored as three-fifths of all other persons, and at the level of a beast, and any man without national roots from which to draw strength. And the great God, for his guidance, is no longer a complete man. That's why for those who kept up with the total commercialization of corporate USA as posterized in The Wizard of Oz, you can easily see the Negro, black, and colored as purely a fictional character, which is a fake citizen, painted into the scheme of an ex post facto government per se. You know, you have to rejoin the human family, the family of nations, your nationality, your divine creed. And it's impossible for anyone to live in the land of make-believe without their shoes handed down by their ancient fathers or forefathers. Now, all we have to do is apply, and we can climb the three steps of thinking, of this thinking ladder, without its rounds of belief, faith, and fruition, which is in your Moorish Quran, chapter 7, verse 25 to 31. That's why to attempt to remove in whole or in part one or more fifths from any man is a conscious act known simultaneously as both a sin and a crime, Moors. And ironically, when you talk about law, when you talk about United States judicial system, it marks this violation as a federal crime. If you say you study law, research it. It's a federal crime, and it's known throughout the U.S. courts as what? Denationalization. And this when I say when you get some goofball Negro with the feds on that home talk about he can make you some more. What they did, that's a crime. He can nationalize you or denationalize you. Or tell him to go make a Chinese or a Sudanese. He can't do none of that, but he can make you something. You ain't even think about that? You ain't even think about that, but he can make you something. Or somebody, some goofball, some person call themselves a grand sheik, talk about they can make you something. How they can make you something? They can't make nobody else, but they can make you. They only do that garbage with you because certain Negroes are gullible. But the irony is in the crime is that been committed manually by every state since the 14th Amendment became law and being written state seal upon the live birth of every freeborn Moorish baby in America. But denationalization is paid off on their birth certificate as another baby is born. And I'll talk about that when we talk about the Negro and the sardine. These are just things that's been taught all through history. I'm just an angel of Allah. That's it. You got to beware of a person when they say they lawyers. When I say so you have certain rights, any lawyer worth the salt of the bar exam will lie to you and swear on the Bible. And they had declared that blacks are citizens of the USA because the term other persons of the U.S. Constitution refer to slaves. But watch this. This is how I know because I sit with professors, man. I don't have no fake degrees. Listen to this and then research this. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, right? And or the Dred Scott decision was replaced by the 14th Amendment. And or the amendment specifically eliminated the three-fifths formula, right? So what these fair servants of the courts would not tell their clients is that no constitutional laws have ever been handed down by Congress to teach back the latter two-fifths necessary to make the free slave into a whole person. A person must be made consciously whole before he or she can become a so-called citizen, have the rights of a citizen, and be subject to the jurisdictions of a citizen. And everyone, I do mean everyone, anywhere on the planet Earth, has all five-fifths and are whole, except guess who? The Negro, the black, the so-called color, the Latino, the Mexican, the blacks made in America, and the cities of India, And the 13th Amendment abolished physical slavery, but left psychological, which is mental slavery, in full effect. This violates the second fifth, the right of mind, the soul, of the five gifts from the Creator. Speaking of one's right mind, it reminds of how Christianized Negro, blacks, and colored, no disrespect, would pray to God or would pray to somebody else themselves. That picture, Serapis Christos, Caesar Borgia, because nowhere in the Bible it says that your Messiah is that picture or that symbology. Nowhere. So stop lying. And then you would thank that person for not allowing them to wake up this morning, clothe them in their right mind. And little do we know that you woke up. You woke up with the gods that we're presently serving and are not their inherently own. So with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, the enslavement of the human body is now legally enforced upon criminals, duly convicted as a punishment for crime. And yet the ex-slave still existing within the United States is held powerless and subject to the jurisdictions. And their only crime was being of African descent. So the 13th Amendment merely closed the door of slavery in the South, which was without power. And at that time, it opened Moors. It opened the door, or it opened the jail gates. You know, I hope y'all know this. President Lincoln also said, "My people do not want them." He said, he talked about the slaves to become citizens. And if I could unite my country without freeing the slaves, I would do that. These Abraham Lincoln diaries, he was actually expressing from a European national sentiment. Not true red-blooded Americans wanted to free slaves. And although the ratification of the original 13th Amendment, you know, with its fully body of 20 sections, did not reach fruition, it is still one of the most important for its historical adjudication before the 1864 U.S. Congress, to be known as the African descent, right? Especially because, one, that the enactment of those laws was also about the emancipation and freedom of their recent grand forefathers. And number two, y'all, with the full Senate vote on passing the 13th Amendment was yes, 38 and nay 7. And the U.S. slave population was 98% illiterate. And not one of them was present to represent themselves as a people. You see? They can now know what their grandfathers could not have known. You know? And the following information can be found in the U.S. Library of Congress, or the 1885 book called The Great Conspiracy by John Logan. I'm giving you the science. This is nothing secret. How can a person say that? I'll tell you, this stuff is recorded. All this stuff can be found in the U.S. Library of Congress, 1885 book called The Great Conspiracy by John Logan. Here is one of the proposed original 13th Amendments with the full body of 20 sections. I'm not going to read it all. All persons shall have the right peaceably to assume and worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience. The use of public press shall not be obstructed, but criminal publications made in one state against the lawful institutions of another state shall not be allowed. The rights of citizens to free and lawful speech in public assemblies shall not be denied. Access of citizens to ballots. I mean, come on, man, I can go on and on. But we're not. The 14th Amendment, watch this. There was no need for the application of the 14th and the 15th Amendment for the slavery of a people. And I'm going to go on deeper into this later when in school, but I'm crash coursing you again. When you examine the 1865 and the 70 amendments, and you have to make the determination that the 14th and 15th Amendment was very sneaky. And it was a document that, how can I say, re-enslaved to have ever been written. And the 14th Amendment alone is so crippling and devastating until it later transformed every U.S. citizen, from, how could they like to call them, sugar cubes to corporate sheets, known as what? Straw men, within the 60 years when the bill was ratified. And the power of the South have been its slaves until losing the Civil War. And the 1863 military strategy of the Emancipation Proclamation and the 1870 Negro Voters' Right Amendment provided the Southern states were powerless without the slaves. And when you research that the 14th and the 15th Amendment brought the North and the South in unit and placing the Southerners who were at that time without power. And since the Civil War was primarily fought between one brother in blue and the other in gray, I hope y'all know this, the 14th Amendment was actually a legal settlement and or agreed order, which took slavery from the Great Dispensation and spread it over to the state throughout the United States or the Blue Republic. And this was the only way both brothers could settle the long-sided grievance about the power owning, sustaining slaves in America, right? That's why you got to understand that the founding fathers and prosperity were and are seriously about certain slaves. That's why you got to understand that they fought their mother country and then each other just to keep the precious human chattel. I'm telling you, man, when you research a president of the mighty Saxon nation, Chief Sitting Bull, in 1834 and 1893, it was not only Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer's worst daymare, which was a little bighorn in 1876, but he also knew well the nature of the, no disrespect, the European Masons in positions of power. And the chief said, the cool words of the pale face spoken in darkness always melt in the sunlight of his axe. How true, and nowhere is the Masonic exoteric, nowhere is the Masonic exoteric, uh, uh, um, exoteric language more vividly demonstrated than in the 14th Amendment, written expressly for the ex-slaves and the Saxons and the indigenous people of America have and are experiencing the terrible whiplashing effect of many broken treaties. That's why when I talk about rarely do many people of the United States realize the Congressional 13th Amendment was also a manumission treaty with the African descents of former slaves, Moors. And this document not only freed the slaves, but also simultaneously created a second new nation of people, Moors. And the Treaty of Freedom was broken within 3 years of its ratification, if you want to deal with law and history, by the covert and needless 14th Amendment. You don't know what you'll be looking at. And also living in the same sunlight of European words, the so-called Negro, colored and black people being blacklashed from the 1868 14th Amendment. Still believe that this congressional act made them citizens of the United States, and it didn't. I'm telling you, man, without the free national descendant name of their forefathers and their own true nationality, then by the divine and natural law, they are still slaves and subject to jurisdiction. Therefore, or thereof, property, now owned by the U.S. government, its courts and laws. In short, the clause gave the U.S. assumed ownership again over ex-slaves before they could wake up from the mental blow to the head that would make them a nation. I mean, this is things to think about, not nothing illegal lawfully. Think about it. When you respect, we respect the U.S. courts. We respect everything, you know? But the 13th Amendment frees the African to proclaim their forefathers' free national name and religion, right? But they didn't. Listen to this. This is by choice. Over the centuries, every form of dehumanization contrived by man, the Negro, black, and color, have become too accustomed to handouts or to begging or identify to what somebody tell you. And worst of all, they have been knocked in the head so hard that they are still legally unconscious of themselves and our divine origin. Since the year 1865 and 1868 was too brief of a period for any Negro or any nation to undo chattel slavery. You know, mental slavery, all that stuff. Since the United States Constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and the 15th Amendment for the salvation of our people and citizens. Right? Think now, right? Y'all, you don't gotta like me or nothing. We're talking about law. So how can somebody make you something if we're gonna break things by law, right? Since the United States Constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and the 15th Amendment for the salvation of Negro, blacks, and colored. If you talk about you study law, because the laws just protect you. Come on, I'll wait. That's why I said Negroes today, African Americans, will never have true rights. And a misnomer, Negro, black, and color, being the names of denationalized human property, self-identifying, were never designed to have rights as labeled property. Negro, black, and colors can never have true rights because all rights are contingent upon universal, natural, and or what? Civil laws. Before there can be rights, there must first be laws from which the rights derive their strength. Think about that. And since the Negro does not have a constitution or laws of autonomy from which to govern itself, he or she cannot have lawful rights. This is why the great Dred Scott decision of 1857 stated, the Negro has no rights that the true citizen are bound to respect. You see that? So the divine and civil law was ratified in the 14th Amendment under the word person. Listen to the language. And sealed in its section 4, which stated, in essence, that Negroes, which were persons, whether free or slave, have no rights to compensation or reparations. See, I'm in favor of all that, of reparations, but you got to restore back to your original state. One name, one national flag. And restitution is only reserved from constituted governments for atrocities imposed against another recognized nation. And you letting all these people talk about they finna print you some ID and some damn plate or some damn passport. Please, tribe and her family bearing the same free national name by design. By design. The Negro, black, and color is neither of these. And to avoid paying reparations to slaves and descendants of ex-slaves is the main reason for the Congress of the United States, the writing to Section 4 into the de facto 14th Amendment, recycled bin of the Negro, black, and slaves, which were persons identified or identifications. Man, all this stuff can be researched. This amendment, y'all, is nothing short of a title of ownership as assumable jurisdiction of the free nation of people brought forth by Congress in the 13th Amendment. And the Negro, black, and color must be free as a people bearing one free national name. Then only then will they be able to claim rights, which will draw its powers from their own constituted laws and principles. And until these laws are adhered to, the Negro, black, and color will remain as chattel and without rights. They can only function under granted privileges, as demonstrated shamelessly with the 15th Voting Privilege Amendment. Research it. This has been the existing condition since the 3/5 clause of 1779. And today's graduate lawyers of the American Bar Association exams will argue that the 3/5 clause and Dred Scott decisions were overruled by the 14th Amendment. But see, that's not true. They will lose this case. They will lose this case when explaining how the same slave labels of Negro, black, and color that lawfully began in 1779 are still certified as state-owned property today, over 200 some years old, all this time later. That's why we talk about the certificate of live birth. There is not a rightful law on earth that can make a citizen from a mold designed to produce the shapes of property Moors and African Americans and others being another misnomer. And an egg slot of slave labels are exclusively made in America. And this is why privileges granted to property should never be misconstrued as being the same as true rights earned by citizens of a free national government. I'm telling you, we almost done. That's why the last of the Reconstruction Amendments resulted from the Great Rights of Suffrage of 1870. And this amendment gave guaranteed voting powers to the free male Negro slave. But it was not because Americans loved the slave and wanted to give them the right to vote as all other citizens. Quite contrary to that, the assassination of Lincoln, the South began pouring representative and money for they could have the vote. You know, citizens of the U.S. were guaranteed the right to vote in the very first article of a Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1. Therefore, the 15th Amendment was purely for the purpose of pacifying a segment of civilian populace for a time. This is why the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment are all prompted by the government to quell some form of civil unrest, Moors. That's why Negroes will perpetually remain as chattel and without rights. That's why we teach that with the first Moorish Council to diagnose the ex-slaves as unattended victims of mental slavery. We got to understand this, man. So to free you from this mental slavery, behind the scenes of the U.S. Reconstruction Amendments, now that you have been properly introduced to all the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, the way have been paved to go behind the scenes. And we'll teach that in class. We'll go further to that in class. Once class start, we'll start breaking all this stuff down. We'll break down the citizenship and the civil rights, all that stuff, for you can know. But that's it, man. Syllabus gonna be going out. We got everything done. Class gonna be starting at the end of January. You're gonna get all your books, everything, and your membership fees coming in each month. You will be a stakeholder. And when we want to have a temple in Arizona, we're gonna pay for it. And more is gonna help build and get land on a 40 acres if you want an acre or two, so we can have something to come to. And that's what this is about. But Islam, send me your email. If anybody else can send me your email for the syllabus. GoodmanKhary@gmail.com. GoodmanKhary@gmail.com, or inbox me your email for the syllabus and the enrollment fees and all that. Islam. I'm done, Sean. She sleep. Oh, my knee. My knee. Man, this shit just fall asleep that quick. Yeah. I said, why I couldn't get me any ice cream. Ice cream? Yeah. And some ice cream bars in there? Oh, yeah. Well, eat again. Well, eat again. I'm about to eat. You got to eat. Yes. Eat. Ooh. Shut up, Shaw. You laughing? Yeah, sure. I mean, that's not real. But then come on. Watch for the watch. See the watching. Watching. It's almost 10 o'clock. The watching. Yeah. Yeah. You watching for the watching, John? Yeah. Jumped up. Jumped up for the watch, man. I thought it came on Tuesday. You thought wrong restriction. You can't wait to fix this one? No. Well, we'll do that later then. Yeah. You gonna stop? Yeah.